And for a round of applause,
Yes, welcome to today's show.
episode 91.
91. Wow, 91.
91 days of COVID.
91 days of COVID.
And
It'll become a song.
t-
On the first day of COVID, what your love bring to me.
and think about it, we don't count the weekends.
No, we do not count the weekends. Yes. And
So today, Andy, we're talking to Anthony Illiano.
nice
Is he
pronunciation.
Greek?
He's not Greek. He's Italian. We're going to talk to him about not being able to say no. And we're going to do that
On a Wonderful Chaos. We did it!
This clearly is the hottest day we've ever done a show.
Look, I'm dripping.
I mean, it is so hot. You may hear peripheral noise because we have to open windows. It is that hot.
And I don't think our editor is going to like that.
No, he will not. He likes us to have a very clean audio so he can do a nice podcast.
No,
Yes.
no,
Yes.
no.
By the way, Bambos and I, just as a little side before we get into the meat of this episode, Bambos says to me, Andy, I'm going to wake you up at 6 a.m. and we're going to go to a beautiful place so you can get pictures for the new book.
Yeah.
Promotional pictures. I didn't sleep because it was so hot I couldn't get to bed.
And he woke up sleepwalking into the kitchen, eating pistachios and
Yes.
tofu.
And I ate pistachios and tofu because I've got all protein now. So even if I snack and cheat, I do it with protein and not with all of the carbs.
Which means no fatty belly.
Yeah.
You actually did slim down.
I slimmed down. I've lost 9 pounds in the last 10 days or so. So I've done some serious groundwork. Nothing foundational, but at least I could put pants on today that I couldn't have worn a week and a half ago.
I love it.
That was nice.
So,
Anthony Illiano. I'm really excited to have Anthony on.
yeah, I know he's a good friend of yours.
Yeah. And it was, you know how I rope friends into doing topics that at first I think, do I really want to ask him? Like, is it like, because I know we could talk about 20 things. Anthony's fascinating. He's in media. He was co-founder of Buzzworthy, which featured my last book, and it's featuring the next book. He's been a mentor to me when it comes to everything media online. And I surrender to him in ways I don't to a lot of other people. So he'll take me on journeys. I'm like, oh God, where am I going? But I know, it's going to be the best for me. And so when, but we have this kind of exchange, and as I've worked with him, I wrote about him in the second book, and it's in the chapter, My Unreliable Friend. And the reason that I called him unreliable was because of his inability to say no.
I love that.
And it was interesting because it's sort of a weird paradox, right? If you can't say no to somebody, then you immediately become unreliable, because in some ways there's things you shouldn't necessarily be saying yes to, which you do say maybe kind of yes. People build up expectations of you, and then they get resentful as hell because they think, hey, you said you were going to do this and you're not doing it. And the other person said, yeah, I'm going to do it, but I'm going to do it when it suits me or when I have the time. And you know how it works in life. Everybody kind of thinks when someone says yes, then they have an expectation implicit in the yes. And then they're resentful when it doesn't proceed often. So when that happened, we had a little bit of a fun coaching session. I think at the moment I had him on the phone, I said to him, just to provoke him, you're totally unreliable. And he got really triggered, and he started to defend and apologize. And I was like, Anthony, stop. You're doing me a favor. I'm entitled to none of your time. So like, if I'm now creating a codependent relationship with you, this isn't healthy. Like, if you're busy, you get to say to me, Andy, I can't do this.
Or just to know.
And I think there's a fondness that's grown between us, because there's this embrace that he is loving and caring and wanting to do the best. And he doesn't necessarily know sometimes how to say no and then create havoc in his life, because he gets overwhelmed, of course. That's what the consequence is.
I remember when I did the no workshop.
Yeah.
I did not know what I was inviting into my life.
What was the no workshop? I don't remember. I did it, or did
I did it. It was an authentic relating evening.
Okay.
It was 3 hours, and I invited people to say no.
Yeah.
And the amount of people in the room, I think we were 25 people, 26. It was a big group. And I had people leaving the room
because they were so triggered.
Yeah, like they were leaving the room, and I was alone, and I had to tell everyone, "Hey guys, stay here, like time out." I went and got the other people that left, and I just brought everyone back. I'm like, I'm alone. I can't be.
So just for the people listening, so Bambo's twice a week or once a week, depending on the week,
twice a week
has authentic relating nights where people come in groups and they have experiences which help them deepen connection to themselves and others.
Yeah.
And in that night, you said, I remember us discussing it because I think we often brainstorm before your groups. What are we going to do? Well, one of the hardest things for groups to practice is saying no. So have them say no to one another's faces and experience themselves saying that. Yeah. And that's what happened. Yeah.
And well, the thing was, there were people in the group that didn't say no, especially women, to a sexual encounter. And that was really big. I think by the end of that evening, I just wanted everyone to leave the room. I got on my bike. I went to Wester Park, and
you threw up that night.
I purged. I threw up. I shouted no in the middle of the night. That was heavy. Like the inability to say no kind of stays a stuckness right now.
Because what you didn't at that time, also what I remember you not knowing is that you were going to trigger people that relived really bad experiences in their lives that they weren't able to say no to. Yeah. That's where the ability to hold space and that intense environment is really important, right?
What I would have done differently, we needed more time. This was like a day or two workshop. It wasn't a 3-hour experience. In the simplicity of an exercise, by the way.
Yeah. So with all that, it would be cool to bring on Anthony. We could be spent, we do all of our own shows. Anthony, we talk about single things for, I don't know, like an hour. So we could be like, oh, Anthony's also here 95 minutes later. Hey.
Oh, what a pleasure to be on. I'm excited for the topic for sure, considering our long discussions about it. And Bambo, it's great to drop in with you. Been loving
thank you. Thank you for coming on, because we did discuss what the topic might be. And you were really open to this one, which I always have deep gratitude to people who say maybe that's not the easiest or most comfortable topic to dig into, but it's you, Andy, so let's do it. That gives me, I mean, that's when I want to cry actually in life. Yeah, that's really when I want to cry.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I think that I so trust in the process of exploration, and I know that we all have our own patterning, and there's been some jewels behind what has been like habituated pattern around trauma that I've been able to discover. And I just had a conversation with a loved one about turning trauma from the hole in your belly that doesn't feel right to the torch that guides you and others to liberation. And so boundaries and saying no have been certainly part of my existence. It's a lesson to be learned. So,
I still don't, it's always interesting because we did a show on boundaries. That show did quite well, actually. And I've often had a struggle with the word and the idea of no, because in some ways there's a feminine or more gentle energy that really doesn't want to say no. And you embody that energy for me.
Yeah, like much more yin and permissive and accommodating. Where I would link that to would just be having an earlier childhood with a very alpha father, that the imprinting of that, like just, great man, and the consequence of the dynamic is permissive Stockholm syndrome of what was a kind of bold, domineering, cavalier Southern Italian kind of machismo masculine. And so, I have a sibling who took that on, and it was more of a repelling quality for me. And so like I can get there provoked, and Andy tends to do that. But generally my default is like maneuvering around obstacles and not like being the bold energy in the space.
Like water.
Yeah, I guess so. And so it has a yin quality to it.
Yeah, it's interesting because all three of us had pretty alpha fathers. I like how we say alpha because it gives it a less negative connotation.
I think my dad was really confused.
I think Bambos was probably the worst of the three of us if I have to gamble on it. Yeah. Whoa, oh, way worse. Oh, for sure. Like Bambos, when he tells the best stories of his times with his dad, are when his dad is hitting him. Like that's how you know. I still don't have one good story from you and your dad all these years.
My heart goes out to you, Bambos.
Yeah.
And what a
like inside of me, I was like, it's not really that bad. I mean,
okay, can I just share one story to Anthony so he can have context?
Shit. Okay, go on.
And this is a nice story. So theoretically a nice story. They're driving down the road. Dad is speeding. So dad pulls over for the cops. What does the dad do? He goes and smacks Bambos. Bambos starts crying. The cop comes to the window and the dad rolls down the window and says, listen, he's got to go to the hospital. I got to go. I'm sorry. This is just... And then the cop lets him off and they drive away. So that's the positive story. That's the positive.
Got it.
Do you understand how crazy that is?
Well, that's the thing. I that for me would have been very normal. And when I see his reaction, it's like, oh yeah. Like up until what age? Until how many years ago? And when we met, 2014, I thought violence was normal.
I see.
Yeah.
Like I didn't have a problem with shouting. It would be a way to communicate.
Got it.
If you can't handle it, deal with it.
Yeah. It's all your problem.
Like, from that Bambos back then, I'd probably be judging you if I was still in the 2014 as, oh, he's such a wimp. Look at him. And being here with you right now and seeing your qualities. And when I said like water, I was thinking of Bruce Lee actually.
Wow.
And I could really appreciate this, like almost Aikido.
Yeah. Thank you.
And I don't know how it impacts you internally. What I just said, actually.
Thank you. I'll soak that one in. First off, thank you dearly. I'll say that, like, what a reflection. It hasn't always been this fluid for me. I probably was much more gripping and pushing inside as, like, I don't know, 4 identities ago, like 8 years ago. And maybe a real terror against self-exploration, just going on a real run against it has opened my heart, maybe even extra to the point where I'm, it's tricky managing boundaries and, layer in purpose and some distortions there. It's been tricky. Earlier on, I was just probably more in my sheltered naivety, and so now I'm opening and finding fluidity through it. But it's been a journey, and so, like, thanks for sharing that. I do feel like there's some hurdles of being able to move through. And yeah, I would say, like, I've certainly struggled for standing up for myself and my own boundaries, and bringing myself to the table of my life has been part of it.
It sounds like you're stepping into a new space and you're still trying to figure out, like, with your arms open, like trying to feel where the line is.
Yeah, that's a good way of putting it. I'm certainly discovering. I'd love to be exploring a no workshop. It sounds very powerful. God knows that. Some of the new spaces that have kind of created a bit more opening has been an exploration into purpose, and anything that I feel aligned, or this, like, deep, visceral, intuitive hit, like, oh, this work needs to continue in the world, or things of this nature, I feel more inclined to be supportive. And now there's the discerning between, is this a hit of intuition, or is this Anthony's distorted approval-seeking ego trying to be part of a good person in the world? And so that's the line to walk. And yeah, there's many lines to identify.
I like that. The distorted ego of Anthony wanting to be a good person in the world. I know that part of you. I'm almost looking forward to you saying, Andy, I've had enough of your shit. Like, I think on that day, I'll say, wow, this is really a beautiful relationship.
That's when he'll trust you.
Yeah.
Anthony,
it's tricky because Andy embodies a particular, like he likes to work the edges in terms of exploration, and I'm so fond of anyone in the coaching space who has that level of courage and commitment to do that. And so like let me deeply honor that. And in the same process of like telling that energy to fuck off in the process is kind of a paradox, and it's freeing. So yeah, that it's opening.
Yeah. In fact, I think I'd like to some point, like pretend like I really want you to do a lot of things and like force you on a timeline only to test you to say no. Anthony, I'd like for you to do this other thing that we didn't discuss that takes a lot of your time and energy you don't get paid for, but I'd like you to do that for me. Is that okay?
by tomorrow.
It's tricky because there's this like mentor relationship in there, which is just like rides the line even like, and it's good work. So like if you were like someone who was like leechy or trying to like self-promote, it'd be a totally different story. I'd be like, zip, door, but instead it's like the emergence of like art as a artful movement.
If I'd like to dig onto that one, if I may. I would like to suggest that even that is, so we were talking about the inability to say no on the program, is that I would say the fact that you're so open to people like me, which I'm always grateful for, obviously, is still, for me, loss of an opportunity for you to say yes to yourself. Because that's what I often feel with people when I would suggest, when I say like you, it's not about saying no to me. It's actually saying yes to yourself. And the fact that I experience that as a no is not your issue. It's just you have other things you need to do in order to get your life under control.
That really lands lovely. And the past even few weeks really just had some like stark realizations of how if there's a need in my sphere around me, how I'll orient my goals to accommodate it, and then the degree to which my line of sight gets a little bit more obstructed and I have to work a little harder. And it is coming to to light like how little I've put myself as a priority, in the great scheme of things, and more made my work like, yeah, I want to be supportive of regeneration and Earth as I live out my karma, right? And so, like, I have to be careful of that dogmatic thinking now too, right?
Yeah, I mean, that's the identity. That's like, when we'll talk the word identity or ego, and it all gets so convoluted, and then we pass judgment on it, and then we say ego bad, and then I think, oh, now we're really screwed.
I'm curious about something.
Oh, please.
Anthony. Mm-hmm. When you don't say no to Andy, let's say, like if I tune into myself, he's done so much as how he stands in my life that when he asks for something, the notion of no doesn't even cross my mind, because since I've met him, it's like I want to make this person's life easier. Like the amount of ease he's like supported me on my journey, can't put a price on it. Like I lose the words. I can get emotional there, and I'm wondering, it feels like you guys have that relationship also.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I'd say that like Andy's a force of good in the world, a deeply devoted being who stands in the taking on very challenging projections to say the medicine of the moment. That's sacred work, and like the stand I've seen you have for others and myself is angelic. Like hands down. Like I'm not supporting Andy. I'm just aligning to divine will here, right? Like let's call that a thing. And nice. So, there's like an analogy, a story of a really incredible passage from the I Ching that I really love about a superior and an inferior general, and I think Andy embodies this really well. And an inferior general, if you will, uses manipulation, ego, to control his men. And in a moment of need, he will be let down. In a moment of his greatest need, his men will not show up for him. But the superior general is governed by proper principles, committed to modesty, generosity, humility, acceptance. And then the degree, when he's in need, his men will show up for him to the degree to which he showed up to proper principles. And so Andy's that superior general in my life. And so I align my will to support that which is in alignment with proper principles.
Nice.
And so that's like the flow of the unseen in my mind. It's like, it's got me, I'm here, and look, there's a pearl, and then suddenly I'm gifted to something. And so I have to be careful because I'm playing out a couple of realities simultaneously, and that's my experience of Andy.
So I love that this is the Andy Love Hour.
Shut up. I have another question.
You scripted me for this, Andy.
Where in your life, you see I said no just now. Where in your life did you not say no and there were fucked up consequences in a way like Jesus, avalanche?
A way like what?
Like an avalanche of shit came into your life.
Because you didn't say no.
Yeah, let's say, I mean, let me tune into this one. I mean, it shows up quite a bit of like, I would say that I've, in my reality, I'll maybe have like, I counted at one point like 6 or 8 different individuals or people that'll come to me for just some perspective or support, and the degree to which I have a hard time turning that down, that I'll find myself a little overdrawn in that way, or like the degree to which I'll support like, partners or organizations and like really try to get the fullness of myself. I'll say like probably a really big one, if I had to get a theme, would be like this workaholic energy of really like burning life force to really put forth something. And in that, like, I leave myself on the sideline. Like, I think that would probably be, and my life has been a journey of like being my job, which has been like, I was my identity was like my work until like I broke free of that and experienced just like the multifaceted approach of connection and discovery and experience. And now I'm like, that has evolved to like, I am the love I share in the world. Right. And or a number of things. And so certainly overworking myself to support, which is that which appears positive, whether it's a partnership, whether it's, I'll even say like, man, like my life used to be like, I could cry in the shower for joy like 5 years ago. Like I had like beautiful connection. I had a richness of experience. And then over time, like just being with the suffering of the world and being in a position of media and communications, I feel like I've really taken on this like holy quest that is like Anthony's list, like an idea on the sideline. What it really is like the tireless pursuit of unification, of regeneration, of like saving our children from indoctrination, and all sorts of progressive programs of driving people towards change. Like I've taken that on as like a heavy backpack. And so the cost of that has been like tired, I'm tired about it. And in that, like,
if I may, just to get an idea,
please.
It sounds like trying to be a good human being.
Yeah, there's I would say, I mentioned it before, like maybe a distorted purpose that is not in equilibrium with Anthony. That would probably be a place of.
Can I correct that sentence?
Of course.
Can you just take out the word maybe?
A distorted purpose.
Yes. Before Bambos interrupted me so rudely.
I was going to come back to that.
I was going to say, I love that you almost never interrupt it. I'm loving this. I just got to remember, how forgetful I am. I would venture to say that the identity that you've taken over from the last identity, right? The high achiever in the media space to my identity is I'm someone who is going to lead the change to a post-industrial revolution society.
I will correct someone to lead. Like I'm not attached to that either. It's not like me. I'm like, I could be the unseen behind the scenes, just allowing for those who are of the highest charge and connection to truth to come forward. Like I have no attachment to this. Me too.
That's what I meant when I said leading.
Yeah. I mean, if that's being asked of me, I have resistance to stepping into it, but I'm like, fine. It's like I could do it. but it's not really my preference to be like, look at this and my phone and me, but what about me? I'm like, whatever. Like,
the idea that I had was exactly, when I say leading the way, I'll be more specific.
Yeah.
Behind the scenes leading the way.
Cool. Yeah, there.
I love how you qualified. You're not even going to give me an inch, are you? I've got to fight for every word that's coming out of my mouth right now. So my point being very simple is that you do have an idea about yourself that you're a good person and you're going to do good in the world. And I would suggest to you, and this is the suggestion, that that identity is not all that dissimilar from another identity, which also makes it hard to say no, because once someone is identified as that and have to say no to something that might create the thing, it's not easy.
Yeah. Oh, that's great. Like, I can see that. Yeah, just hearing that, I feel some freedom in that. There's like any attachment to an identity feels like it creates just places of resistance, and like, why be stuck anywhere? So like, let me just zoom out now. Yeah. That
Anthony, do you want to have sex with Andy?
No, thank you. Sorry.
Really? I just lost 10 pounds. I lost 10 pounds.
I
lost 10 euros.
Yeah.
and he said no.
Yeah.
You just got rejected.
Yeah, he got rejected. Bambos doesn't get out. Bambos is considered to be the more attractive of the two of us on this show.
I don't know why.
And the women tend to be interested in him, so we have a lot of fun with that. Well, he got rejected by who rejected you?
My ex-girlfriend's mother.
His ex-girlfriend's mom rejected him lately. It was a new experience
on the live.
On our live vid.
Yes.
So yeah, I wanted to sort of point out that pattern, I believe, will show up again and again and again, to the degree to which you do believe you're a good person who's there to support others.
Oh, the identification.
Yeah. So,
like, any identification with, I can. But
doesn't necessarily.
Yeah. So let me just play this out.
Please.
So like, I'm a terrible person, and that's fine. It would be like the embodiment of that energy.
Yeah.
And
how did it feel to say that?
It felt, obviously humor came out in lightness. I'm like, it felt very freeing, right? But behind that, I felt the emergence of like, I'm confident and whole in myself, and I don't need external. Like, really, if I have to boil this down, it's like a self-love system that's based off of performance and approval, right? So like if I had to like go underneath the hood and finding that I'm like whole in the eyes of the all, that's just like all my bones melt into jelly, right? If I can,
that's I think with alpha fathers, I don't know. I think I can speak to, there's an overachiever thing that I've noticed in myself that it like has to prove. It has to prove. I've always made the joke that if you want to hire a really good salesperson, then you find someone that wasn't loved by their parents, because they just carry that same trait into their lives. Like, they have to prove themselves. So even if they were the best sales at the end of last month, they feel like, I'm not going to be loved unless I'm the best again next month.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, that's like the deepest motivation is not financial, it's approval.
Yeah. Yeah, it's just seeking approval. And I think at least I've recognized that in all three of us based on similar patterns. Yeah.
Yeah, I recognize that.
And so is that your HR staffing plan now?
It is, actually. I mean, I might not say it out loud because, especially in the US, they would say, hold on, first question, are your parents divorced? Like, what age? How was it? No, that wouldn't go down well. But yeah, I honestly see that there's this.
How do you feel about your mother and father?
Yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah.
It's not going to work out between us.
No. You have a great family life. Okay. Apparently that's not going to be the right fit.
It's funny, huh? Like some level of childhood suffering is needed to give you that.
I mean,
that it can be an edge.
It can be an edge. I would say, if we were to state it that way, then a proper listener would say you can't make an assumption like that. And I would say, and yet I have seen on several occasions that people who've had suffering have become adults that were more well-rounded than others who had lives that just were very simple and catered, and they got whatever they wanted, right? A lot of them turned out to be drug addicts when they got older.
Yeah, with all your needs met. There's no adversity. Yeah. That's a tricky one. So I'm in the process of like synthesizing the kind of like shrapnel, no pearl, I imagine is kind of what's happening. There's,
my challenge with you and anyone like you, and this is, I put you into a category now.
I feel labeled.
It also might be all similar with Bambos, actually, if I think about it, is that I'm always wanting people to make firm statements and then learn from the statement. Like this is true. And then I don't want to reinforce it, but I want to use it as a contrast. Because if I don't make a statement, then I'm just sort of staying in life a little bit wishy-washy. And that what I found, you said, Andy, you're more principled. And you're, in that sense, I can identify with that. Because if I don't live principally, then I'm like, the decision that I did, by the way, I don't even think I make decisions. I made a decision 10 years ago that guides me today. I don't even really think today I make that many decisions. It's someone says something, I have a principle that I think, oh yeah, that's how I navigate. And I don't assume it's right, but I use the principle unless something shows to be apparently better at the moment. And what I've kind of wanted, I guess, for both of you is a discipline to say, when you say no, for instance, I give you a no that I'd want you to say no to if I had is that I will never say yes to a request until I've considered my agenda and what I can do. And that'll take me a bit of time because I don't necessarily know at any moment how busy I am.
Oh, that sounds so soothing on my nerves. Yeah. Yeah. Let me just program that into this. Yeah, that feels great. Usually, recently I've been giving like a few days to like sit with things before I give it immediate answers, and yeah, that takes it even further out, which is great. I feel less, there's like less obligation for my own principles to hold something if it's gonna disrupt the context that I'm bringing forward. And now I'm learning to actually like really honor my own vision, and in that process, like have confidence in supporting it and not distracting myself and taking on liability. And that's emerging more and more as I feel like, oh yeah, my context in the world is like outside of my identity, outside of being a good person.
Yeah.
Right. And so like I feel more eager to bring that forward than to enable someone else's expression of identity or vanity or whatever, unless the work is actually unification as well, holding that same charge. I just want to be connected to the charge.
I can speak to that. I'd like to translate that into my speak.
Please.
Is that if you don't have a clear yes in your life, this is what I want, then you have to say no to other people because they're competing against your nothing.
Oh, I see. Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
I'm looking at Bambos just to see if it was too abstract, or was that
too abstract?
Oh, thank you. Because if Bambos doesn't nod his head, I assume it's too abstract. So if you don't say, I want to have a company that's generating $100,000, $200,000, $300,000 at the end of this year, and I want to focus on 3 projects to make that happen. Now, all of a sudden, that's your yes. Now, if someone comes to you and say, hey, dude, can you do me a favor and give me 40 hours of your time? Immediately, you saying yes to them comes at the cost of your own yes.
Yeah.
So the only way around it is to say, I would love to do it, but my yes overrides you, which strangely enough, for me, isn't really a no, although they might feel it as a no. It's no, I'm saying, getting back to the start of this session, I'm saying yes to my own projects.
Oh, that feels great. I can see where I got hung up earlier about it. And, when I was like much more connected to the corporate machine, we were only talking about personal time, and then as my like work in the world evolved and there's like much more potential for collaborations, like I see inevitability, when I scale and have particular staffing to support some of these requests. And so, yeah, now it's really, I hear the lesson, like just be so certain in your yes that everything else will either align or not, and there's definitely some new range there for me.
Yeah. And I really do find that to be very, very true. If someone has a clear yes to themselves, then they don't have to say no anymore. Things just drop off. because I don't ever feel like I say no to anybody. Someone asks me a request, I'm like, oh yes, I love it, and I don't have time for it, or I'd love to help, or this is how I can help, because I already know what my own direction obviously is, right?
Yeah, that getting clear on that feels to be the work. This has really been a journey. When it was personal time, like that was easier to manage or lack because I was incredibly busy. Then having gone on my own, like 7 years ago, had much more unstructured time. And so then like things came in and I had to be much more discerning and managing of that. And then somewhere along the way, like I would say in my own spiritual exploration, blew up in my heart and really just have had a few non-dual experiences where I'm like, we're really just an expression of love in this plane. And so like there distortions came into that where have allowed my own boundaries to get overridden by myself by not holding my yes. So there's some lessons there.
You know what I've also seen in the types of communities that you may be inviting into your life, where people have thoughts of joint ownership. No, there are no possessions. It's imagined by John Lennon sort of thing. Those people tend to feel a sense of entitlement, actually, strangely, to other people's time.
Oh, interesting. Yeah, that's an interesting one. Like, I have encountered some really devoted activists that are like, Rome is burning, let's do this thing, right? And then having to be like, it could look like this, and the timing is like opaque. I've encountered a few groups, and like I start off by like honoring their intention, and just it's a tricky and it's a funny phenomenon what you mentioned about like this collaborative, decentralized, just kind of we're all nodes of the collective space, and there's some entitlement. It's entitlement with the masking of like vision, purpose, and you're an activated node.
Yeah, it's a dangerous, slippery slope, because all of a sudden, and I've noticed with people that have a lot of purpose and a lot of beliefs around that purpose, all of a sudden, anyone that's not necessarily supporting them is really just a part of the problem. So in that way, it has another element potentially to it, which I've also witnessed.
Oh yeah, I'm wondering where that one goes. Yeah, there's like in the way the us versus them kind of energy about it.
You will be judged.
You'll be judged for sure. I'd love to go to some mommy-daddy issues.
Oh, let's take it there.
What is it about the no for all of us that is so hard given the alpha dad? So what is it there that we say, hey, this is what comes up for me?
If I had to take it, I wouldn't fully attribute it. I'd attribute the yin states to the alpha dad, but the no, I'd say like, I will say that my father does show up in support. Like there's like a complex of a savior complex, or like a be a good man. His father was like really great man, and so like I think there's like an obligation to show up to the needs of another that's been like imprinted, at least in my reality. And then I would say the yin kind of behavioral I express comes as like conflict of aversion, and just like tuning into like, let me see where this goes, where it could fit, versus like, nope, needs to look like here. These are my laser cut lines, and cross the lines, you will get zapped. Yeah. So that would be my experience of it. But I'm curious how that lands for you in your relationships.
I mean, I have a pretty clear picture in my head. I don't know how it is for you.
I was listening to you, Anthony. I didn't get what you said.
That's good.
Like I really had to focus on what you were trying to say, and then I realized, I didn't really get the question either.
Okay, so here, when I was a kid, my dad was verbally abusive all the time, bipolar, and the thing. I judged anger all my life as a kid. Like I don't want to be that. I don't want to be that. So basically, I see in judging anger and then actually taking that energy and saying, not that, I actually suppressed it, obviously, in myself. And that came in the form of also when people asked me things, not wanting to create conflict.
Oh, yeah, that's totally there.
So I don't want to create a conflict. So I'll say yes. and just because I want to be a good boy, I don't want to have problems, I want everything to work. And I just noticed that was where I saw it in myself develop. I said yes to avoid the conflict of having potentially to say no.
Oh, yeah, that lands really well. Yeah, there's some habituations and neurons that are really wrapped around that. Yeah, so I'd say, yeah, I see that patterning, and now I'm in the process of reclaiming it and not taking the disappointment of another personal, and yeah, it's a habituation. There's some tendrils there.
Yeah, that thing as well, the disappointment of another person. Like how can you just think about how crazy it is that we all do this? We have the idea that we can make another person happy.
Oh, yeah, you're like, who's got ownership there? Yeah, you do nothing of the sort.
and
by self-sacrificing.
But yeah, even by self-sacrificing.
Yeah.
And then our lives are fucked. The moment that goes as an unconscious like Riddler in the back of your brain.
Yeah, I could see it like taking responsibility for other people's emotions, and then the never ever game playing like ping pong on both sides forever. Yeah.
Ronnie last night was in a really bad mood, and I was treating her really nice, and she said, "Andy, I feel like you treat me nicer when I'm in a bad mood." And I laughed. I said, "Sweetie," like I started naming all the things I do when she's in just a normally good mood. I'm like, "You're just surprised I'm nice to you when you're in a bad mood."
It sounded to me like you were defending.
No. It was really just like because I laughed. It would be, you could defend, but I was laughingly loving her as she did it. So it was not an energy of like, no, baby, you're wrong. It was more like, sweetie, let's recap how we live, And what I saw in her, obviously, was that when she gets triggered and not feeling well, it anticipates that another person will react negatively to that. So the fact that someone would be more loving or as loving as they would normally be just doesn't compute.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah, you mess up with her brain.
Yeah. Like how do you deal with that if someone's even more loving to you, or as loving? Even doesn't really matter.
Wow, that's really the good I moved there, Andy. I think that's like the need to be is like to meet that energy in that space is optimal until it crosses a line that you have to maintain. But ideally, even so, it's all grace.
Well, I tend to like escalate then I'm even more loving.
Yeah.
But that would then form into you could call it manipulation by that point. Like at the point when they go there, it'd be like really hugging, like, baby, I love you.
Don't touch me.
I'm not. You just give her so much love. They have this hand-in-hand parenting I've mentioned and do a lot of work with, that they have that stay listening where you just hold that child until the child lets out all the anger and aggression. And then you just hold and hold and hold till they ground the energy. And that's there's something about that. Yeah, it's a beautiful practice.
That sounds like, I think those are proper principles there to be able to be present with someone with extra love in the moment, to meet it in that way, versus like mirroring their emotion, which is what some tend to do.
When you spoke earlier, there's one area where I didn't think, it was almost like I didn't see the potential for a no there. And I'd like to bring that forward to you now.
Please.
When you were speaking, you were talking about that you get caught up and you get so enthusiastic around your work and activities that you would just say, run, and just get lost in it.
Mm-hmm.
How able are you to say no to that?
If I had to map it, there's a connection to purpose there, right? And then like that's also an illusion too. But I think there's an opportunity there. It's not very well practiced. It's like, can I like be 3 months not working or focused on system change or something like this and just be totally in my full content? Like that would be an experience, like right now I see my body having some resistance and like a bit of guilt around it,
But isn't that interesting? Because we often think of no as to another. I say no to them, set a boundary.
Mm-hmm.
But I often think of myself as another. There's this guy who does crazy shit. I can't understand him. Why does he do that all the time? And somehow I say no to him just like I'd say no to anyone else.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, why not take that stance?
I mean, my fat belly. Like, I was okay with the fat belly for a long time.
Until he put his arms up and
until I went to the fitness center and did this and looked and said, oh my God, I became that guy. And then I looked and said, so no to that. It was a no. And, you know, Ronnie said, you know, you've got to go to the fitness center only to look at yourself in the mirror to know when to say no.
I love it.
Oh, that's great.
So in some ways I said no to that Andy. And then from that moment, it just changed, you know, we'll see how much it stays, but so far so good.
I'll take that in and say, like, the season of this transition for me, I've been really putting a lot of energy into a couple projects as I'm transitioning some focus. And, you know, I'll find that my waking awareness is put on tinkering solutions in these spaces. And what gets put on the side is like life admin, or I previously like loved and felt greatly nourished in competitive athletic training, or in that space with like martial as well as cultivation work. I find like energetic cultivation work, I find it to be like Harry Potter meets Star Wars, you know, and like why I would be I'm like deeply excited to do that, and somewhere along the way I'm like, no, get through this critical junction, and yet now I like reflect on what you said, and to make space for myself and to say no to like, no, I will not second my physical needs, my health, my passions. Like, there's some sort of like habit of me of like gripping and pushing through problems, and then in that way I leave kind of myself in cryostasis, but it's really not cryostasis, it's like on the curb. So that's like the lesson here, if I had to give
I mean, I know it. I didn't say no to me when it came to food consumption in the last 3 months and not working out, and just so I know that not no. Is that we haven't necessarily discussed the no this way, I don't think, before.
That's like a no to the old patterns, right? A no to like saying no to that which is not really in alignment in my own like governance. That's an easy no, right? Like an easier no, I imagine. But
well, it would depend on the person, I guess. You know what I'd be curious about is no when it comes to females, because I have the idea that if you're not comfortable with a no, there's codependent relationships that can emerge. That's my projection.
Yeah, that's been there. I've been in relationships longer than I'd like, and in exploring just different dynamics from open relationships.
And were they frustrated with you? Like you weren't reliable, like, you know, my joke in the chapter, or you weren't doing the things I need you to do, and, you know, like, were they hounding you and stuff, or how would you describe it?
I think it really certainly circumstantial. I can probably flicker through a couple of them right now and say, I would say that I've had issues of dependency in that I'll place like 20-30% of my focus on like being supportive or being in partnership, that the degree to which I start to muffle my inner truth to be like accommodating to like, supporting them in the, you know, their next step of this or that. And like, that would be a place I have to be aware of. In some cases I've written off, I went to an extended period of like not being in deep companionship because I've been focusing on cultivating, and knowing, I say that because I was like, companionship is really time consuming because I have poor boundaries, like was like the assumption behind it.
Oh, wow.
I was like, you can be in companionship and not be overextended, Anthony. So
that's remarkable, actually. If you think about it, it makes all the sense in the world. Is that if you can't get over your boundaries, you at least need to set a boundary of who you let into your life.
Exactly. And then the degree to which I've weaved in and out of social circles. We're like, oh, cool, I could be out in the world. I have like free time and expression versus like, I gotta dial everything in and everything out, right? So there's like an overcorrecting, avoiding what is like an easy no.
Wow.
So that's a great find. Certainly, yeah, I'd say like being in relationships longer than I probably felt in alignment with my truth and just exploring dynamics that were like open or different configurations and like there's space here to open up more, and it's great.
I also want to go back to the principle. There was my mentor Case, who you never met, but I've spoken about often enough. He always said freedom is the absence of choice.
So principles would be our freedom in that way, right?
Exactly. The point being, he's made decisions earlier. Again, a decision has a consequence, meaning if you make a decision, there's a no. And he always distinguished between decisions and choices. He said, a choice, you can always change your choice. A decision you've made, and there's consequences.
Oh, I love that. I don't think I've gotten that one yet, and that's great. Because, I deeply admire principled individuals who like take the long and narrow because of it, and for them, it's how it is.
And I would say the idea and how I see it show up in relationships, especially, is that if I make a decision early on, like for instance, one of the decisions I've made with Ronnie is we can never not have a discussion if a subject's serious. We can delay it. We can say, listen, not now, but we cannot say we're not going to talk about that. That's just unacceptable. And since that is a guiding principle, that guides, say, everything we do. So there'll never be a situation that comes up where we don't have a discussion around an issue. And that you can imagine how that just having that is made as a decision before any So whenever I'm in a relationship with anyone else the rest of my life, that's already guiding it. Imagine like when situations arise and things aren't going to be discussed or they're going in that direction, how quickly do you align all the time? Because that's the guiding principle.
And obviously, this is your principle, and if the other person doesn't meet you there, then you're in a relationship anymore.
Well, what I've found is that, especially when I go into coaching work with a group, is that a lot of times people don't know how to hold that principle and stay in a relationship. Like Anthony mentioned earlier, the assumption being, if I'm that way, all of a sudden I'm going to alienate people or I'm going to do it in a way that's contorted. And so the whole thing is, yes, you make the decision first. And then two, you figure out as an ongoing process, what's the best way to deal with it on a case-by-case basis. And it changes and it adapts. Sometimes you have similar people, but a lot of times if you think they're similar and then you approach it the same way, you fuck up because all of a sudden you make assumptions about who they are and you don't see them anymore. So it is really a being present exercise. But my general point, and the reason why it's so important, and the reason why I guess I want to state it over for the two of you, because I've had this discussion independently with both of you, is that the decision guides you, and then you'll figure out how to deal with it. But if you haven't made the decision, you'll run into the same problems over and over and over again, and you don't really learn and grow so quickly. That's at least been my experience. Yeah.
So if I had to let me cement this in now, the opportunity of the moment is to make a principle conviction, steel peg into the ground. And that would be, I will not take on anything that is, first, I will not rush to take on anything. And secondly, I will not take on anything that is not in full alignment of my of my what I'm looking to bring in the world, that it compromises any of my commitments. And I don't have to feel the pressure or the strife or the striving energy of needing to fit something in. I could just give the loving reflection of where the moment is. I like what you shared so perfectly about another experience about being reflective when someone asks for support, but before taking it on too. And so I'm committing to that principle in this moment now. So thank you.
Yeah, and then the stronger version of that would say, I say no to ever allowing anyone to say they want me to do something and immediately saying yes to it.
Oh, okay. I'll take it there. Yeah. I say absolutely no to anyone who needs me to say yes to something immediately that takes me out of my truth and center.
Yeah.
Ooh. Oh, freedom. Billy is like ease.
Yeah. And then it's sort of interesting what I've seen, because I have that as a guide in myself. It's really easy to bring people into my life.
Oh yeah, of course, because you're like, nope, just use the edges, zonk.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And I'd love to help you, but unfortunately I've got 20 other things I'm doing, so I don't have the time. Yeah. And some people will test the boundaries as they do. And I like when they test the boundaries, because in some ways it's like you have to test the boundaries if you're going to succeed in life. Everyone's got to ask other people for favors, and sometimes it'll be a match and other times it won't be.
I'll also come forward and like in my, just like in my vulnerability, there's a whimpering heart here who wants to see all people around me succeed, and there's a willingness to slap more on my plate that says like, let's do that. How great, And so it's like, there's the dilemma as well.
Yeah.
Right?
I found that dilemma as well. Like if you're really good at doing things and you could do something in an hour that might take someone weeks or months, you're like, oh, I'll just do it for you. I'll just do it for you. And then all of a sudden your life is consumed by it.
By 5 of those.
Yeah, by 5 of those. And you think, oh, it was such a short amount of time when I thought about it to begin with, and now it's consuming so much of it. I mean, even in your yes to me, we consumed a hell of a boatload of your time in this. Like we have a meeting a week, maybe two going forward to discuss these things. And I mean, I'm eternally grateful, of course, but I'm also like, you've got shit to do. Like, come on, and sometimes,
go ahead.
And sometimes like you'll spend more time trying to help beyond what we've actually agreed to do. So it's like we could just say, oh, Andy, this is what I've agreed to do, and I'm going to help you do it. But you'll actually project out even further, which means you've given more of your time, energy, and commitment going on in the future.
So I'll respond to that. That's great. I imagine that if anyone comes to you for perspective that you have acquired, that I've seen you be so freely with it, freely giving of it in a way, right? And again, it's it's not so much a choice for me as much as it's a decision to be supportive of the emergence of the highest love in the world. And so I think in the nature of our dance and collaboration and explorations with, just for everyone knows, Andy will be launching 20 articles on buzzworthy.com for his launch of his new book, The Wounded Healer. And so part of my vision mission, that yes, on that trajectory is oriented towards how do I support storytellers, wisdom keepers, or really open hearts living proper principles. How do I expand that? So there's an alignment there. And I some moments like our calls are like, they're exciting. I like working. I like to do that with you, right? In that way, right?
Yeah, we don't even know if we're going to discuss the actual thing we're supposed to discuss because there's so many other things that might come up. Yeah. The thing, thank you for that. And I also have to connect to, I see I'm similar. If there's a company or a group with a big purpose, and I see that like I can come in with love and space and give them my time, and then they'll potentially have a big impact in the world, like that'll often mean I'll give time to that. And someone might say, like Ronnie, for instance, Andy, do you realize that you give away half of your time or more than to profit the things you don't get paid for? And I try to explain to her that that's sort of in that life of giving, the whole picture emerges. It's not that giving isn't separate from all the other business I'm also creating, because you supporting me is also because you also know I'm doing that. So in a weird way, there's an ecosystem that forms with just generosity. But I think, and this is the hard thing for people to get their head around, is if you expect it from anybody, you're fucked.
Yeah, you're so unique in that you hold it grateful. But the second it becomes like a locked in, then it, I've certainly seen that go in certain relationships where I'm like, I'll be here, and then it becomes like here's my thing. And I'm like, and that you have such a hairline observation of where the lines are, and I love it. And not everyone does, and I have to learn like expectation setting and in the way that I've agreed to be supportive of things. And I'm much clearer now, yet I know people who are like lawyers who are like microscopic laser cuts.
Yeah. We just came up to our hour.
Whoa.
That hour shot by. It felt like a minute.
Yeah, that was great and quick.
We are on a very sweaty couch right now.
Oh man, it's hot here too. We're in a heat wave.
Really?
I'm sitting on a towel.
Yeah, we had to put towels down. That's how bad we're sweating here.
Yeah. Generally, I make Andy soil himself, so that's why he.
Yes. Especially after our calls. It takes me a week after you've thrown 3 or 4 new technologies at me. It's like, Andy, you just need to learn Kajabi. You need to learn Calivio. You need to learn this, and then come back and we'll talk.
Yeah, exactly.
It's incredible. Thank you, my friend.
Oh, what a gift. This has been really lovely. I actually have some notes just been taking. I don't turn like, hey, can you take notes in an interview? I'm going to do because I love my calls with Andy.
Yeah, well, we'll have a talk later as well because we have to go through our next iteration on our articles on Buzzworthy.
That's great.
Thank you, my friend.
What a pleasure. Thank you for the space. I love what you two are putting out.
Love you, man. We'll speak soon. Bye. Hey, Bambos.
Hey, Andy.
That was sweet. You see why I love him now.
Big heart.
Yeah, huge heart. He was really, I wrote about him in the first book. When I told him I was going to do the tour, he totally understood my intention and just said, I'll help you however I can. And that gave me a lot of energy. So I was really, really deeply grateful for that. And I think in receiving that, I would call it unconditional love. I was really reminded of like the love I felt from my mom. Like that is the kind of love when you just feel someone is there for you and they know who and what you're about and they're just loving you for that. And I feel that was the thing that gave me the comfort to do the 3-month trip to the US. Because in some weird way, when you first do it, it's hard to give yourself that, to trust yourself enough, knowing you could screw everything up. So just to give yourself that level, like to get the unconditional love from somebody else really helps you. I mean, we've discussed it in our lives, right?
Yeah.
And when you receive it, you really sit in gratitude for it afterwards because it's beyond anything. It's not relationship. It's not money. It's just, wow, that's what love feels like. And it's just, so that's my feeling towards that. Anything come up for you? Because we've had a lot of discussions around no. So I'm wondering if there's anything new or interesting or something that came up again.
No.
You're just hot and tired.
No, I feel in a good place with my yes and no's.
Yeah. I had my issue with your no when it came to some client giving in the past.
Yeah.
But I think that also became clear.
Yeah, you've also guided me because sometimes I'll say no in a very like I'm not in relationship anymore, like no.
Yeah.
And you've actually given me the insights and tools to I know what I'm saying no to, so where's the yes?
Yeah.
How can we make it work so you stay in connection?
Yeah. I don't think that's what people understand well enough is that there's all of a sudden throwing the baby out with the bathwater. It's like
I've thrown baby out with bathwater many times.
Yeah. Instead of just saying, hey, where does it work? Where might it work? Like don't even put in the idea that it will, just the opening up. And I've seen a lot of, especially in business, like once someone assumes that there is no business, then there is no business. But to say, hey, I know this didn't work out, but what might be possible? I found that there's a lot of opportunities there that people didn't realize were actually there.
Yeah.
So cool. Tomorrow we talk about gut instinct, and we're also going to talk about
gut versus instinct.
Gut versus, and really, was it gut? I thought it was gut and the differences. Yeah. Well, I was thinking that we were going to discuss however people wanted to verbalize intuition. How do people deal with intuition? You feel there's something and then you don't do it because you're not secure because you don't necessarily think you know it. So I want to discuss where's the boundary of what we know, say in our like our emotional self, and where does that meet our rational?
Yeah.
And how do we navigate it?
And Thursday we have the guy from Murder She
Murder, She Wrote. Ron Masak, who played the sheriff on Murder, She Wrote.
Yeah.
And then on Friday, we got Bolalan, one of our favorites, because he watches us pretty much daily and sends us notes and messages about what he does or doesn't. He doesn't not like, but he sends us questions. We see you then tomorrow on A Wonderful Chaos. Bombas is going to go put some ice on his head. Bye.